Hello again. I think our attendee level is starting to level off a little bit. So again, you might have noticed the link on the screen if you'd like to contribute where you are regionally, just so folks have a feel for who's on the call today, what kind of areas are represented. We could actually, before we get started, we could take a quick look possibly at those live results and see what that is shaking out to be. We'll see if we can get that on the screen. There we go. Right, still climbing in some of those. Looks like a lot of folks from the Intermountain West. Great to see the Northeast represented here as well. Northwest, Southwest. Looking good. So we're at somewhere over 100 attendees. Thank you all for joining today. And thank you for telling us where you're joining from. So now let's get this listening session going. So welcome to the first in a series of water availability listening sessions co-hosted by USGS and NOAA's National Integrated Drought Information System. That's NIDIS, in case you hear that pop up some more. These listening sessions seek input on priorities and needs related to predicting water availability changes under drought conditions at national and regional scales. So this input will be used to guide USGS Drought Program planning and orientation. We will additionally be making the findings available to supplement complementary activities in drought and water availability for others. We thank you for taking this opportunity again to provide input on what you need to help us prioritize the development of science for your drought applications. And we appreciate in advance bearing with us through any potential hiccups that may occur. This is a large group to get organized, particularly with respect to the breakout groups, the interactions and the presentations, and hopefully we're able to do this today in an effective and fun way. My name is Brian Clark. I'm the acting USGS Drought Program Coordinator. And for this introductory session, I will be acting as your co-moderator.
And my name is John Hammond, and I'm the USGS Regional Drought Project Manager. So a special thanks to everybody for joining the session today. We're going to start off with a quick introduction to the USGS and NIDIS, and then we're going to share 3 presentations to provide context for the subsequent discussions in the breakouts. So these 3 presentations will be on streamflow prediction, challenges of understanding hydrological drought, and an example application of how information on streamflow is used in drought management. Throughout this part of the program, we're also going to provide opportunities for interactive engagement to get to know you and your streamflow information needs. After the presentations, we're going to split up into small breakout groups to seek your input on national and regional scale priorities for your drought applications.
And after the breakout sessions, we'll reconvene and have a preliminary discussion on the input and feedback received. Our primary goal today is listening to and documenting your needs and priorities. And again, we thank you for your participation on this. So starting with who we are and why we're here, we have a few summary statements on this slide for both the USGS and NIDIS. As you can see, the USGS mission involves monitoring, analyzing, and predicting complex human and natural Earth system interactions, and to deliver those as actionable intelligence at scales and timeframes relevant to decision makers. Thus, the reason we're talking about drought prediction today. NIDIS mission is to work in collaboration with partners at all levels to help the nation prepare for, mitigate, and respond to the effects of drought. We're partnering on this series of listening sessions to support a comprehensive interagency approach for drought prediction, drought research and prediction, so that tools may be developed to help states and local communities plan for and mitigate the impacts of drought. Today, your moderators, facilitators, and note takers all represent USGS and NIDIS, and we look forward to the discussions and getting to know you and your perspective.
Perfect. So thanks, Brian. As a quick preview of the diversity of our attendees today, we've had registrants join from across the U.S. with a large contingent from the Western U.S., including California, Oregon, Texas, and Colorado. And notably, we also have individuals that are registered from a number of different tribal nations. We also have guests that are registered from various international locations, including Canada, Costa Rica, Brazil, Chile, Germany, Greece, China, and Ethiopia. So we're super excited to hear your diverse perspectives and to get your input on the wide variety of locations and applications that interest you. So now, as a group, we're going to take some time to get your input on our collective familiarity with Streamflow prediction products. If you haven't already, please open up that Mentimeter website, either using the URL and the code listed on this slide, or you can even use your phone in order to scan that QR code. We're looking for you to let us know which category best describes your interaction with existing Streamflow prediction products. So you should have the option to choose multiple categories if they apply. And we'll also include an option for items that are not on the list. And if there is something that's not on the list and that you'd like to put forward, please go ahead and put that in the chat to let us know more. And we're going to take a couple minutes for these results to come in. Those results are changing pretty rapidly here. It looks like we have a lot of folks who either sometimes or regularly use Streamflow prediction products. So that's great to know. And we're hoping that you can bring information on those products into the breakout session so we can hear how you use those products. What are some of the things that you wish were included within that functionality, so that we can kind of help to guide how they're developed in the future. We do have some people that are saying something that's not on this list. So if you do want to provide that feedback, go ahead and drop that in the chat as well.
John, we're getting a comment in the chat that the Menti code was not left up long enough for people to be able to respond.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Great comment. Thank you, Stacy. So at the very top of this slide, we also have just the menti.com link. So if you just go to menti.com and if you enter that 8-digit code that's separated out into 4 groups, or 2 groups of 4 numbers up at the top of that page, that should give you access there. And yeah, great to sort this out on the first slide. We're going to have a number of these polls. So.
Mm-hmm. And if you'd like, you can even leave that open. If you have it open on your mobile device or another browser window or something like that, you can just leave it open, and that screen will prompt you when it's updated to the next topic. Yeah. So
it
yeah.
Looks like I was going to say, it looks like we have just a couple more people still adding their polling responses. So we'll let those come in, but I'll say right now, it looks like we do have a mix. It seems like the majority of people at least use Streamflow prediction products at some point within their day-to-day tasks. And we do have some people that are actually generating the information that goes into the Streamflow prediction products. So I think we're going to have some really useful interactions in those breakout sessions. So for now, it looks like those responses have kind of plateaued. So thank you very much for your input. And next up, we'll move on to a summary of today's agenda.
Yes, and thank you for adding anything additional to the chat that is not covered in that particular group input as well. Appreciate that. So as a quick overview of our agenda today, we will move out of introductions now and into our set of featured presentations. We're going to hear more about Streamflow prediction, hydrologic drought, changes of understanding hydrologic drought, and an example application of how information on Streamflow is used in drought management. So between presentations, we'll have other opportunities for some live interaction, and we will transition from this segment with a few minutes to cover the upcoming breakout sessions and then move into the breakout discussions. We'll return then to discuss and report out as a larger group, and then wrap up and talk about next steps.
Perfect. Thanks, Brian. So if you were able to join our initial kickoff webinar last month, we introduced ongoing national and regional drought prediction work that the USGS has started. And you might have heard the name Stacey Archfield. So back then we promised that you'd be hearing from her, and today we're fulfilling that promise. So Stacey is a research hydrologist with the USGS Water Resources Mission Area based in Reston, Virginia. She leads projects related to national drought research and the development of an integrated hydroterrestrial modeling capacity. Her personal research is focused on understanding hydrologic change for water resource applications. Today, Stacey's presenting national streamflow drought research in support of prediction, and will be providing insight on the national project and priming us to think about gaps and inputs as we prepare for the breakout sessions that follow the presentations today.
So I think Catherine was running into some audio issues and resharing to get the next portion going. So maybe we're up and running.
Hi, my name is Stacey Archfield, and I'm a research hydrologist with the USGS Water Resources Mission Area. I'm also the project manager for the National Streamflow Drought Prediction Project. And I'm really looking forward to hearing your feedback today on how we can prioritize the research that we're doing in this project to serve you, the stakeholders of our research. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge our project staff here, show their faces and their names as well. So when we were developing this project, the first thing we really wanted to do was think about what the properties of a national drought prediction system would look like, and use those properties to then drive the research questions that we would ask in the project. And so I'm going to show you a set of boxes of what we thought the main properties of this national drought prediction system are. And of course, throughout the listening sessions, we would ask for your feedback if you feel like we are missing something here, or you want to add additional properties that you feel we need to have in this national drought prediction system. But the first box we have I'm showing is accurate, timely, and locally relevant drought predictions is a property that the national drought prediction system should have. Another would be long-term prediction of extreme conditions for different components of water availability. Now, I know the focus of today is on stream flow, but of course we want to account for different components of water availability like groundwater, soil moisture, and other particular aspects of water availability. We also want the capability not just to predict particular drought metrics, but we also want to be able to convey drought risk. So the probability of a particular metric entering into drought would be something that we may want to convey for different components of water availability as well, including ecological flows. And the last piece is that we want these predictions of conditions, these drought metrics, the condition of the drought metrics, and then the risks, the potential of going into a particular threshold, exceeding or a particular threshold of a drought metric, to include the effects of human activities, not just a natural condition. And so now this is where we talk about, using the questions to kind of drive your end user input to drive and prioritize the research. So I've placed kind of the properties of this National Drought Research Project here on the right, and then we can think about the types of questions we would need to answer in order to get at the end product, which is this National Drought Prediction System. And so we can think first about what it would take, what questions we would need to answer to get at accurate, timely, and locally relevant drought predictions. And those might be, what are the most informative and or actionable drought metrics to predict? What is the achievable level of accuracy for drought predictions? What is the spatial scale at which these predictions are needed? And how often should these predictions be updated? And then to get at long-term prediction of extreme conditions for different components of water availability, we might ask, well, what is the forecast horizon for each drought metric? And perhaps that forecast horizon might be different for, say, groundwater versus a surface water metric. And then in terms of the capability to predict drought risk for different components of water availability, we might ask, what could be conveyed about risk of entering a drought? What are the types of risk information we need? What are the thresholds that are most important? And what other risk information might be useful? And then lastly, for predictions, we need that to include both natural and human effects of drought. We need to understand what are the most important effects to consider and how does the relative importance of these effects differ nationally. Certainly that we could think about different parts of the United States having different effects, different relative effects being important on drought. And we need to account for that in our national prediction system. So now we look at what the current drought research is going on right now in support of prediction. So there's many questions to be answered. This is what we need help with in terms of prioritizing this research. Many questions to be answered, and we can only look at a handful of them at any given time. So right now, the orange boxes of the brown boxes I just showed you, those are the ones that we're addressing right now. But we're certainly open to reprioritizing our work or listening to how we might be able to even adjust the work in the orange boxes. That's what the purpose of these listening sessions are. And so I'll just go through some of the work that we are doing with respect to that. So first, we're building core data sets of USGS stream gauges and groundwater networks, as well as remotely sensed data sets to be used for analysis and prediction. And this isn't just, putting data sets together of data we have already available, like online for you to download, but this is also looking at what are the factors that affect the stream gauges and groundwater networks, things like land use or reservoirs that might be within the area that's contained within the contributing area to those wells or to those stream gauges. We're also looking at the identification of major drought events using those metrics that we identify for these different aspects of water availability, also including paleo droughts. We're testing machine learning approaches to predict drought and then to predict those drought metrics. We're also examining drought with respect to frequency, occurrence, magnitude, and onset and recovery. We're characterizing the trends and variability in drought events and changes to the timing of drought events. And then we're also working collaboratively with our federal and academic partners and leveraging the existing data sets that they might have that we may not have in-house at the USGS. We're also working to link hydrologic drought to other phenomenon, including wildfire, floods, snow drought, water quality, and flash drought. So with all of that, I hope I've given you some things to think about for the breakout sessions. Some of these questions will be asked directly in the breakout session, and we look forward to your feedback on this and your help. So thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you to Stacy for providing that overview of streamflow prediction and hydrological drought. If you have any specific questions for Stacy, please post those in the chat at any time. And to follow Stacy's talk, we now have another opportunity to provide feedback on the times when you've had to make decisions in the absence of streamflow predictions. So if you'd like to take part in this interactive portion, just go back to that Mentimeter website if you still have it open, or use the QR code or the link and the code that's provided on this page. And we're looking for you to provide your input regarding the experiences where a lack of information on predicted streamflow during a drought has cost you or your customers, or has negatively impacted resource management decisions. The responses include, this has occurred pretty frequently, occasionally, rarely, or not applicable. And as individuals respond, we're going to flip over to the other screen to look at those results as they come in. So it looks like we do have a large number of people for whom this particular question is not applicable because they are not making decisions related to resource management. But looking at that next green box, we do have a number of people who rarely have to make these types of decisions. Let's see. Typically, people seem to have sufficient streamflow information, but there are some cases when they're operating with a little bit less information than they need. And then we do have some entries here with frequent or occasional periods when the streamflow information that's needed just isn't quite there, or maybe not in the way that you need it. So you're forced to make a decision, maybe with incomplete information. And we'll wait just another, 30 seconds or so. We're almost to that plateau that we reached the last time with the poll. Well, I definitely look forward to hearing about some of these cases when folks did have to make a decision based on some incomplete Streamflow information. So we'll look forward to that in the breakout sessions. But we're now going to move on to our next speaker.
So next up is Andy Wood, who is a project scientist with the National Center for Atmospheric Research, Climate, and Global Dynamics Lab in Boulder, Colorado. Andy will be presenting on streamflow forecasting for drought in the U.S., strong capabilities and compelling opportunities for advancement. Andy is an expert in the areas of flood and drought forecasting, hydrologic modeling and applications, and monitoring and prediction, climate change impact assessments, water resource management and planning, and seasonal climate prediction. His current focus is on improving data, models, and methods for hydrologic prediction and climate impact assessments, including advancing the implementation of hydrology in Earth system models. He previously worked in academia, the private sector, and for the federal government before joining NCAR. So here's Andy. We're not having any sound yet. May have to, I'm not sure what the audio issue is there. Teams, as we mentioned before, Teams is providing our own opportunities. Nothing yet, Catherine. We'll give that another shot.
Hi, my name's Andy Wood, and I work for the National Center for Atmospheric Research in Boulder, Colorado. Today I'm going to talk about current challenges and opportunities related to streamflow forecasting for drought in the U.S. It is important to start by recognizing that the U.S. has relatively strong capabilities in streamflow forecasting. These are better than in many countries and at times and space scales that are relevant to drought. These include short-range forecasts out to 10 days and long-range seasonal and annual forecasts at lead times up to 2 years and even longer in some locations as the Colorado River Basin. The NOAA River Forecast Centers, which are the primary centers for streamflow forecasting in the U.S., are staffed with forecasters who in some cases have deep expertise over many decades regarding U.S. watersheds, and other agencies such as the NRCS and the water agencies, Corps of Engineers and Reclamation, also participate in the flow forecasting enterprise. And the USGS is one of the world leaders in streamflow and groundwater monitoring practice. These data and forecasts are critical to managing our water infrastructure from municipal scales up to regional levels. There's a growing need for an improved understanding of watershed sensitivities and even basic functioning. We need to know more about the impacts of long-term trends in climate on basic watershed yield and other quantities that are used in water supply, but also on the predictability of streamflow and our ability to make skillful forecasts. Stakeholders are concerned that climate change is driving changes in our watershed hydrology and the patterns and relationships between variables like rainfall, evapotranspiration, snowpack, and runoff, which will reduce the predictability that we've exploited over the past number of decades. We need to know more about how surface water and groundwater interact during drought and whether our models fully capture these interactions. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence that there's a drought hangover from one year to the next that leads to lower than expected runoff. If this is so, is it due to these surface water groundwater interactions that we're not representing? And how can we learn more about them and build them into our forecasting models? We also would like to know how dynamic vegetation and soil changes during a drought influence hydrologic response, in particular during other extremes, such as before or after wildfires. Our forecasting models do not currently take these factors into account. Fortunately, There are compelling opportunities to advance our prediction capability. We can make better use of subseasonal to seasonal climate prediction information. There's currently very little use of subseasonal climate forecasting and even of seasonal climate forecasting in our current hydrologic prediction practice. Many studies from the last 20 years have shown that there's usable climate forecast skill that can be found in either empirical teleconnections from climate indices or more recently in seasonal climate forecasts from global coupled climate forecast models. We need to have an ongoing interaction between climate scientists and hydrologic forecasters to steadily develop this aspect of forecasting. Unfortunately, it appears that the agencies like the NOAA Climate Prediction Center are making efforts in this direction. Other opportunities to advance our prediction capability include improving our watershed modeling. We currently use relatively simple models in our operational prediction enterprise, but we can carefully add complexity to account for some of the missing processes in those models, such as including factors for dynamic vegetation, surface water, groundwater interactions, and land use change. We need research into optimal model configurations to figure out how best to harness predictability. We know that too much complexity can overly constrain the model to the point that it's not very useful for forecasting, but too little complexity in the model can't capture key processes. We also can improve our watershed forecasting by improving our observations, whether in situ or remotely sensed, as well as the techniques for using the observations to update the models, which we think of as data assimilation. There's not much use of data assimilation, particularly objective data assimilation in current forecasting practice. It tends to be handled by manual forecaster interventions and updates in the models. So there's a lot of room to apply better techniques. Finally, machine learning in recent years has been shown to perform quite well in simulating streamflow forecasting in certain situations. So there's probably ample opportunity to make use of this more generally in this enterprise. If I had to make one overarching recommendation about improving our forecasting capabilities, it's that we need to regard streamflow forecasting as an applied science, multidisciplinary with a complex set of important components. It is not only about modeling or improving models or climate forecasting or observations, but rather requires advances in many areas and expertise across multiple disciplines. The best systems are not built just by modelers, and in fact, when we've seen modeler-centric development efforts in the past, they've tended not to pan out as well as expected. Some of the elements I've talked about before in this presentation, such as improving weather and climate forecasts, but also the methods used to formulate them into model input, improving modeling and watershed observations, but also the hydrologic data assimilation techniques needed to fuse them with the model states. Statistical methods such as post-processing to correct systematic errors and to apply verification and benchmarking to forecasting systems and their components are needed. We need to transition away from manual forecasting workflows toward over-the-loop prediction approaches. And we need to recognize that forecasting is essentially an informatics challenge that involves Earth system science and bring in more people with expertise on the informatics side. In particular, I think the U.S. hydrologic prediction enterprise needs a formal multi-agency community testbed for forecasting research to operations and to foster systematic development and add rigor to our efforts to advance streamflow prediction. Thank you.
All right, I appreciate Andy for providing that overview of the complexity and challenges of how hydrology interfaces with predicting drought across the Earth system. So again, if you have questions for Andy, please continue to post those in the chat, and Andy and others will try to monitor those. And at this point, we may all wonder what type of applications of interest there are to the crowd. We'd again turn to some interactive participation here to see what applications may be represented today. And these may range from water resources and agriculture to ecosystems and geophysical research and others. So you probably know the drill at this point. We'll take just a couple of minutes here for this opportunity to provide that, and then we can again look at some real-time results as those start coming in. So I'll give it just a couple of minutes. We have several in already. So I see drought monitoring and prediction popping up there pretty high. That's good since we're in a drought listening session. Excellent. On water resource management. We have several folks interested in ecosystems monitoring. Within Water Missionary here in the USGS, we have an eco flows program as well as a drought program. We actually work pretty closely with that program. A lot of connections there. And several, probably next in line would be the climatological or geophysical research. So it's good. I'm seeing responses up in the 90s, so that's about where we're hitting on some of these others and seeing that level out just a little bit. So thank you again for your input. And now we can move on to our final presentation for today. Last but not least is Heather Patno, who is a hydraulic engineer with the U.S. Bureau of Reclamation. Heather began her career in hydropower with Western Area Power Administration and moved to water operations within Reclamation shortly thereafter. She has operated multiple reservoirs encompassing various authorized purposes, environmental compliance, and hydrologic variability, and finds hydrologic models an important asset in determining risk and uncertainty to balance competing interests and priorities. So we're going to queue up Heather here, pending any audio issues we may have. Catherine, I'll try to let you know if we're hearing it. It seems to work best if she actually stops sharing and then starts it up again. I don't know what the team's issue is there, but.
Hello, my name is Heather Patno, and I work for the Bureau of Reclamation in the Upper Colorado Basin region within the Power Office, dealing with hydropower and reservoir operations. Thank you for the opportunity to provide information about the Colorado River Basin ensemble-based operational forecasting methodologies to determine risk and uncertainty during drought. First, an overview of the Colorado River Basin hydrology. The Colorado River is geographically located in the Rocky Mountains and southwestern United States, covering portions of Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, and California. 16.5 million acre-feet is allocated annually, with 7.5 million acre-feet allocated each to the upper and lower basins, with 1.5 million acre-feet allocated to Mexico. Historically, there have been 16 million acre-feet of average annual natural flow, with 14.8 million acre-feet in the upper basin and 1.3 million acre-feet in the lower basin. The Colorado River is a western river system, and inflows are highly variable from year to year in accordance with snowpack, soil moisture conditions, and temperature and climatic responses within the river system. In order to mitigate for the highly variable hydrology, the upper and lower Colorado has 60 million acre-feet of storage, or about 4 times the annual average inflow. These reservoir operations and water deliveries are governed by the law of the river, which includes the 1922 Colorado River Compact, along with various compacts, legislation, court decisions, and records of decisions. The upper Colorado and lower Colorado River have been in a drought for the last 2 decades. The driest 23-year period on record has occurred beginning in 2000 and including the 2022 forecast through the end of this water year. Water year 2021 was the second driest inflow into Lake Powell since 1964. Lake Mead reached its historical low level since it began filling on June 8, 2021, with a new low elevation reached on December 3rd, 2021 of 1065 feet. Lake Powell reached its new historical low elevation since first fill on July 24th, 2021, and has continued to decline to its current elevation of 3527 feet, or 25% of capacity. This graph is showing the Lake Powell end-of-month elevations from the beginning of filling through January 2022. You can see that in the 1980s and 1990s through to September 1999, Lake Powell was essentially full. Starting in early 2000 and continuing through April 2005, Powell's storage decreased 2/3% of capacity. Various operational mechanisms and operational records of decisions were put in place in order to respond to the drought. With these operational mechanisms in place and variations in hydrology, Lake Powell has remained around 50% of capacity up through water year 2020. Water year 2020 had 54% of average inflow. 2021 had 36% of average, and current projections forecast 66% of average inflows this 2022 water year. During this time, we also had some of the driest soil moisture deficits and warmest temperatures on record, further decreasing runoff from the near normal snowpack within the upper basin. Our current capacity is now 26% and is forecasted to continue to decline. Reclamation has provided an update of potential and forecasted operations into the future for decades. We have done this under the 24-month study process, which is updated monthly and looks 24 months into the future. The water supply assumptions are based on synthetic hydrology that combines the current year National Weather Service, Colorado Basin River Forecast Center forecast, and statistical inflows in the out year with deterministic reservoir operation assumptions. The maximum probable uses the 10th percentile or blue line. The most probable is the median or 50th percentile in green, and the minimum probable is the 90th percentile represented here in red. This covers around 80% of the potential uncertainty in the current year and provides insight into a range of potential future operations. Over the last decade of drought and experience with updating this monthly synthetic hydrology, reclamation has been limited in the ability to forecast the extreme hydrology that we are seeing. In order to address that, Reclamation updated its modeling procedures and methodologies to incorporate the National Weather Service, Colorado Basin River Forecast Center 30 ensemble traces or potential forecasts based on historical temperature and precipitation, current conditions, soil moisture deficits, and water use assumptions, and logic-based operational parameters from the Bureau of Reclamation. Reclamation has updated its modeling methodologies so that we can now show the extremes, the maximum probable and minimum trace. The gray cloud here covers the full range of operational uncertainty during these times of drought, and operational projections now cover the 10% of potential traces above the maximum probable and below the minimum probable, showing us the full range of potential hydrology and reservoir conditions into the future. Uncertainty remains as we update the forecasts monthly based on observed hydrology and reservoir conditions in the system. This modeling upgrade allows us to respond to potential extreme drought scenarios and operational extremes while continuing important conversations with our stakeholders as we're responding to them through the process. I hope that you have enjoyed listening and learning about Reclamation's updated methodologies using ensemble-based forecasting in our operational modeling system. If there are any questions, please feel free to contact me in the future, and I would be happy to provide more detailed information. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today.
Thank you, Heather, for providing that overview of how you use Streamflow information and hydrologic drought prediction in your applications. So that's one great example for all the participants today. As before, if you have any questions for Heather, please post those in the chat. We've seen how Heather's projections to use monthly to yearly timescales. So our next opportunity for this group interaction deals with this aspect of prediction, and that is, tell us about the timescales of Streamflow prediction information that are most useful to you. So as before, feel free to provide your ranking of the timescales. I believe you can select more than one in this. Yeah, it's ranking. So, and we'll see how this shakes out in real time as soon as we start getting some of those responses in. And you know, we hope this is useful for folks as a way to kind of see how everyone in this group views these different aspects. Monthly jumped to the top there pretty quickly. Monthly, when, you know, retrospective and weekly was kind of duking it out there for a minute. And now retrospective is gaining. This is kind of like it's a race. Monthly's still on top though. Wow. You see one coming up from behind, John?
I don't know. I think we're set on the winners now.
Yeah, you think monthly's got it cinched. It's a good lap ahead.
Yeah. I don't know. We probably have about 16 or so more respondents to get in here. It's actually interesting to me that the retrospective and weekly are just about neck and neck there. I don't know what I was expecting exactly, but I don't know that it would have been that. So that's good. Yeah, this is another point where I think hearing a little bit more about why these timescales are so relevant and how they're used in your applications will be, you know, really interesting during the breakout sessions. Yeah, absolutely. What are we up to? Is it leveling out a bit? I don't see weekly and retro duking it out quite as much. We're up in the 90s. Just a little bit more. Annually is dead last. I can see that. It's kind of interesting. My former life was in groundwater modeling, and to look at anything other than annually was almost out of the question. So to see it at the bottom there shows kind of where we're at technologically too, with our needs. So good. All right. Well, thanks for adding your input, and I'm going to turn it back to John to introduce our breakout sessions. Perfect. Thanks, Brian. So at this point, we're going to move into our small breakout sessions. You've each received an invite that will start at the top of the hour. So just note you're going to actually have to exit this meeting, but don't do that quite yet. So you'll exit this meeting, and then we're going to move into those sessions. And then following the breakout sessions, we're going to reconvene into the large group for a final report out to discuss that input and the next steps. So before we exit this current meeting, we're going to take just a few minutes to walk through exactly how the breakout sessions are structured and where to find your link. So the objective of the breakout sessions is to get your feedback in a smaller group setting. As Brian mentioned, our primary goal is to listen to your needs and priorities. And thank you in advance for your participation and with anything that goes wrong with this first set of breakout sessions. Like I said, we're going to go into those breakout sessions, and then we're going to come back to report out to the broader group based on kind of the priorities that were identified during those sessions. And as an initial approach to group individuals for the breakout sessions, we've tried to organize you within the NIDIS Drought Early Warning System regions, or if you're outside of one of these regions, we try to group you with other individuals from similar areas. So as you join your breakout session, you'll be asked to introduce yourself to the session facilitators and the note takers, as well as your fellow participants. And during the breakout sessions, your facilitator and note taker are going to walk you through 4 questions. The first question focuses on understanding your applications for Streamflow information in order to anticipate changes related to drought conditions. The second question is then based on your organization. We're going to spend some time chatting about some of the challenges, special considerations, and common uncertainties for predicting Streamflow changes related to drought. Next, we're interested in learning what type of hydrologic drought information products or indices you currently use and what you like or dislike about those products. This will lead us into our final discussion of what improvements to Streamflow information and prediction would help you the most for your application. And finally, your facilitator is going to ask you to identify priorities and responses from other attendees that resonated with you. And from there, your facilitator or note taker will work with your group to identify a priority to share back to the broader group when we reconvene in the plenary report out session. So when you join the breakout sessions, you're going to have access to the full Microsoft Teams meeting virtual features. That includes being able to view all the participants, using the chat, using reactions, full access both to your video and your ability to unmute, and also to leave the meeting. As a quick introduction to this functionality, you can click on the icon for 2 people shown in the upper left-hand part of this slide in order to view participants. You can then use the chat, which we've had enabled in this session by clicking the chat bubble at the top of your screen in order to participate in the breakout session chat. All of the chat comments that you enter will be captured, so don't hesitate to use this functionality. And to interact with others in the breakout, you can use the reactions up at the very top of your Teams application or browser. And to use those reactions, just click on the face that has the hand next to it, and you can select from a number of different reactions.
Yeah, so for example, to raise your hand to speak up in a breakout session, you would use the raise hand function. So this will signal to your facilitator you have specific input to share with the group, and remember to unmute when you're speaking. All individuals are encouraged to use your camera if you have access during the breakout sessions. And finally, when you leave your session to return to the report out meeting, so we're all going to come back together for that report out meeting, you'll use the red leave button to exit the session. If you have any questions regarding the Microsoft Teams functionality, please don't hesitate to ask.
So starting at the top of the hour, we're each going to join a 50-minute breakout session. You'll join using your individual calendar invite, and you'll be joined by your NIDIS or USGS facilitator. On this slide, we're showing an example of what the breakout sessions look like in the Outlook calendar. So you're looking to join specifically here the second invite, and you may need to actually open that invite in order to see the link to the Teams meeting. So with that, we're going to start a short break that allows individuals to move over into those breakout sessions at the top of the hour. If you have any questions on accessing the breakout sessions, or if you don't have a link in order to join the breakout session, just stay on the line and we'll assist you. And we'll see you all again as part of the large group in just about an hour following that breakout. And then we'll be discussing those key points that emerged during those sessions. So thank you, everybody. Go ahead and transfer over to the breakouts if you know how to do so. And if you do not, just stay on the line here.
And again, we'll be starting those up officially in about 10 minutes, but feel free to go ahead and log in and we can get people situated. Thank you.